Well, the year 2015 was undoubtedly a milestone year for all human development stakeholders across the globe. It marks a critical junction between the deadline of the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, and the adoption of a new globally agreed set of human development goals, officially known as the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Today in this segment, we will discuss it with Deputy Director General of ILO, Mr. Gilbert Hungbao. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Gilbert.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Indonesia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is not your first time in Jakarta, right?
This is my second time,
Okay.
but I've been way back.
Yeah, we'll talk about SDGs. Could you briefly explain about the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs?
The SDGs are essentially a set of 17 goals that the world leaders came up last September in adopting them during the General Assembly in New York, as a follow-up to what we call the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. And I have to say that Indonesia has played a great role in this process, which lasts 2 years.
For the last 2 years?
The last 2 years before it was adopted in September.
And how important is the SDGs to the world and to Indonesia?
I mean, this is very critical. One can obviously see them as a very ambitious set of goals. But if we think about where the world wants to be 15 years from now, the level of unemployment, the youth bulge, the environment side, the health and the poverty line that one has to put behind us. So we really have to ask ourselves what type of world we want to leave for the next generation. That tells you how critical it is important. And contrary to the SDGs, to the MDGs, the SDGs are very universal and very well integrated from the economic, the social, and the environmental side.
Well, compared to the previous Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, the SDGs are, so broad and not very specific. In your view, are SDGs with the 17 goals, like you mentioned before, and also, if I'm not mistaken, please correct, 169 targets, right? Are they realistic and achievable, particularly for the emerging middle income country like Indonesia?
No, one thing is very clear, is that it's a very ambitious set of 17 goals, and you say it very rightfully, 169 specific targets. But the process itself says it very, very clear that each country has to kind of nationally own it. So each country, like Indonesia, has to prepare its own plan for that. And doing that, it will have to take into account where the country is today as a middle income, and how from now to 2030. So there's a way that you can really adjust it according to your national situation, but keeping the objective as achievable as far as possible. So we need to keep the momentum for that. And the challenge goes not only for the middle income country like Indonesia, but it's even much challenging for the least developed countries.
Yeah, there are 17 goals. What about the goal 8?
The goal 8 is particularly the one that ILO is focusing on, which is talking about the inclusive growth, sustainable growth, and decent work for all. Of course, for that perspective, it's not only in goal 8. You also have goal 10, which talk about the inequalities, goal 1, which talk about poverty reduction, the social protection. There's a lot of dimension, and what we are focusing on is really on that goal 8 from ILO perspective.
And so, the goal of 8 is specifically focused on decent work and economic growth. So what is the role of ILO on this? What has been done by the ILO, both global and country levels, for its member countries?
First of all, what it's important to point out is the fact that all those goals are interrelated, and if we have to look at them from an integrated approach. So ILO cannot and should not work on a standalone basis, rather together with the rest of the UN system agencies and also non-UN system actors from the financial to the foundations and to the private sector and so forth. It had to be an integrated approach. We, based on our mandate, of course, we have two big set of issues. Some of the issues which are the conventions, the international convention that we want to make sure that the countries work towards upholding those conventions. At the same token, based on the request that we may have from our constituent, meaning the government, the workers, the employers. Based on the request too, we can also work with them to decide what type of assistance ILO can provide.
Now, we have now 2 days conference in Jakarta in Borobudur Hotel. What are the results that are expected from this conference? We,
of course, the conference is going on up to tomorrow, but we hope that will come out after tomorrow by just what I just said, by hearing from the government, from the workers, from the employers and other colleagues, what could be the guiding principle in moving forward, because it's very important that as an international organization, we are not top-down approach. Rather, we really have to have it also bottom-up approach. So we are in the listening mode right now, though we do have responsibility to, as I said, to put for the international convention. So we need to find a balance between the two approaches.
Yeah, how will this result impact the implementation of SDGs in the country? You know, as you mentioned before, the goal of 8, the goal 8.
Yeah. No, clearly that will, it's the first step for us. We have the next 15 years, but I'm very, very, I have to say that we are very much impressed by the fact that Indonesia has started already from day one, which is very impressive.
Yeah, the government of Indonesia has shown its commitment to SDGs by establishment the SDGs Secretariat under the Ministry of National Planning Development, and by incorporating SDGs to the National Midterm Development Goals, or we call it RPJM. And do you have any recommendations for Indonesia in ensuring the implementation of SDGs, let's say for the next 15 years and the 2030?
No, clearly, as I said, we are very much positive. Indonesia is already, in my view, on the right track. They start from day one, etc. So we just want to make sure that we can contribute and making sure that the approach is as inclusive as possible. Bringing is not just the government, it's the nation.
It's the nation.
So we have to make sure that all the parties of at the national level contribute to this debate and to this effort toward achieving those goals.
Yeah. Any particular area that Indonesia should focus on in terms of employment? You know, considering employment trends in Indonesia, with the current closures of factories, with the open market, with the starting ASEAN economic growth, so far. What do you think?
No, yesterday we have an opportunity to have discussion bilaterals with a different part of the government, and we are very, I'm very reassured that the government is really rethinking how to adjust its economy given the current circumstances, and not only be much more diversified and going to the infrastructure, looking at the differences between the regions, and looking at how to fight against inequalities and the social protection systems. And we have an opportunity to exchange, and we express the fact that we do believe that we need to focus on the area which are job-rich growth area.
We have some issues with job reach, in employment, and also in wages. What do you think about our government has done so far in?
You know, we know that there are ongoing discussion that came up this morning. What we believe is very important is to, and we avail our service for this. What is very important is to create the platform for a conducive, inclusive, ongoing discussion. I do believe that though we can have different views, the objective is the same: is a human development development for the Indonesian. So what we are saying that we should not focus on just one issue or in a very, very short-term approach, but we have to see how do we look at them from an integrated part and having a social dialogue. Social dialogue is the answer.
Yeah, let's talk about MDGs. What do you think that the target that Indonesian government has missed? Do you think we have missed some targets here?
I mean, I don't think that there's one single country in the world who didn't miss some of the targets.
Yeah.
But by far, when you look at it on a comparative mode, Indonesia did not do bad at all. So I think the record are quite impressive, positively speaking.
And we're still right on track.
I hope the most important, I think the fact that we start right now put us right on track, and let's hope that the coming years will prove us right.
Yeah. Is this your first visit to Indonesia?
No, my second. Well, the first one goes back to 2002, I think. So it's a bit too.
When
I'm so impressed.
When you were Prime Minister of Togo?
No, I was in the UN in New York at the time.
So what is your impressions, especially?
No, I mean I'm always very, very impressed by the fast moving economy and the social and the daily life of Indonesian. And yesterday also I was very, very much impressed by the discussion we had with the Minister of Manpower and the Economic Commission to see the plan ahead and with the challenge as well. So it's always very thrilling.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Being here, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Okay, that's all our discussion today with Mr. Gilbert Hungbao, the Deputy Director General of ILO. Now we're going to be back with more news after this.